Hey everyone, I'm Pastor Alec,
I'm Eli.
and we're talking about First Kings, just walking on through. So Eli, what do you got for me?
Got chapter 15 here.
Okay?
Um, okay, so talking about Jeroboam, because you see his name still popping up throughout here. Did he live through both Abijam and Rehoboam's life?
Yeah, so what'll happen is at this point, now that the kingdom has been divided, and it's been it's established now that there are two kingdoms.
Right.
And even though Jeroboam we know he's messing things up already. Rehoboam messed things up. Now Jeroboam's messing things up, both in their respective kingdoms.
Right.
Now what's going to happen is it's going to start switching off and start saying, like, this king of Judah died, and then this king of Israel died, and this king of Judah took this king's place, and this king of Judah or this king of Israel took this king's place, and now it's going to like a staggering.
Okay.
So where Rehoboam and Jeroboam come into power around the same time, it's not gonna be like, while this king in Judah reigns, then this king in Israel reigns,
Right.
and then they both stop for some reason. Now, it's going to be all this kind of staggering. So so chapter 15. Now in the 18th year of King Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, Abijam began to reign over Judah. He reigned for 3 years in Jerusalem. His mother was named Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom, and he walked in all the sins that his father did before him. And his heart was not wholly true to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father. Nevertheless, for David's sake, the Lord his God gave him a lamp in Jerusalem, setting up his son after him and establishing Jerusalem, because David did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, and did not turn aside from anything that he commanded him all the days of his life, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. Remember what happened with Uriah the Hittite? As the husband of Bathsheba. so he's saying David, everything which was great in the eyes of the Lord,
Right.
everything he did was right, except for that affair that he
Okay,
had,
okay,
and then having the affair, and
Yeah.
then having Uriah killed basically in battle. Now there was war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam all the days of his life. The rest of the acts of Abijam, and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And there was war between Abijam and Jeroboam. And Abijam slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the city of David, and Asa his son reigned in his place. So here you get, Jeroboam is reigning during the time of Rehoboam. Rehoboam dies. Now Abijam takes over, and then Abijam dies. It doesn't reign for very long. But you notice there's a really important commentary which really kind of sets the stage for this, really the rest of First Kings and Second Kings, is that these kings they're not going to listen to God the way David did.
Yeah.
But God maintains their kingdom because of the promise he made to David.
Right. And you see that all the time. It's for the sake of your father David, or because of your father David.
That's right. So it's not because of anything they've done, but it's because he made a promise to David, and so you'll see that eventually the northern kingdom isn't going to. They're not going to feel the benefits of that promise,
Right.
so much, because they're going to get destroyed much sooner than the southern kingdom,
Right.
by the Assyrians, right? But for a long time, for hundreds of years, literally hundreds of years, they are, where God is watching over the kingdom of Judah and keeping them there just because of David.
Right. I guess that's kind of what I was asking more, was why it was Jeroboam, because I guess you can't be more evil, but if you could be, he would be more evil than the other two, I guess.
Yeah, well, if you want to play that game, that's a
Right.
losing all around game in the books of First and Second Kings.
Right.
Which king was more evil? I don't know. Now, some of the kings, and it's also important to keep in mind, some of the kings were very successful by worldly standards.
Okay, yeah.
So you have some kings that reign for 50 years, and they've done a very good job keeping their their economy prospering. They're keeping the infrastructure up.
Right.
And
I
doing
mean, even Solomon, other than
yeah.
in God's eyes, was good for what he did.
Yeah, and that's
except in God's eyes.
And that's exactly the point. So you got these kings that are actually doing like the people are in some ways thriving under them,
Right.
economically and are comfortable, but they're not doing what's right in God's eyes, and therefore they're unfaithful kings.
Right.
And then they're also leading the people away from God.
Yeah.
Which is something that really should be. Well, here's when Satan, and let's say in Matthew or in Luke, when Satan comes to Jesus and offers him, he tempts him. There's three different temptations. One of them is offering him the kingdoms of the world.
Right.
And I think that a lot of people who maybe are Christians, or especially I'm thinking during this time, this is why I kind of raised it in the first place, without realizing it, they'd probably be okay with that.
Yeah.
Right? So they're okay with Solomon as long as he helps us.
Right.
As
long as it improves life.
That's right, improves life. They're okay with a lot of these kings as long as they help us. So what if they're disobedient to God?
Right.
Right? And I think even sometimes I get the sense that even Christians, they sometimes when we talk about Jesus, it's almost like, which Jesus are we talking about here? Are we talking about the Jesus who said, my kingdom is not like the kingdoms of this world?
Right.
Right? And I'm going to rule in a completely different way. Right? And I think that's something that we should wrestle with. Wrestle with because we're sinful.
Right,
but we should understand the fact that sometimes when we talk about Jesus and the kingdoms of this world, we actually talk about him in a way as if he did accept that offer from Satan.
Right.
Right? And he didn't.
No.
He doesn't want to operate that way.
Right.
And that's something important for us.
That's also like a precedent example, I guess. Instead of accepting like the worldly things, you'd rather accept the godly things.
Yeah, right. And this is in the Gospel of Matthew about the kingdom of heaven, right? You can either do all this stuff and gain worldly rewards, or you can gain reward in heaven.
Right.
Now, if you do that, if you make that decision to do that, then you're actually you might look badly within the world.
Right.
Right? So
I guess that's designed to happen.
That's what happened with Jesus.
Yeah.
So according to the world, Jesus failed.
Right.
Right? But according to God, who reigns over everything and who raised him from the dead, Jesus was faithful to the end.
Right.
Right? So you definitely see that at play in 1st and 2nd Kings.
Oh yeah.
And most of the time they're just disobeying God.
Yeah. It's an entire learning lesson almost.
Right. And then of course the great irony is at the end of the day, God just takes their kingdoms away.
Right.
So he takes the northern kingdom, he takes the southern kingdom. Now there is a pattern where there is kind of this back and forth. Judah, for the most part, Judah's kings, I don't think are as bad as the northern king, the
Right.
Israelite kings. The Israelite kings, there don't seem to be any of them that turn to the Lord, but Judah has some that do, that make
Right.
reforms later on.
Well, that ties into my next question. So you know how Jeroboam had built the 2 high places. I don't remember one was Bethel, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
It's escaped me off the top of my head now. But yeah, he's got one in the north and one in the south.
Right. So in chapter 15, verse 14, it says, "But the high places were not removed." Talking about King Asa.
Okay.
Asa.
Yeah. Okay. Let's actually go. Let's be clear about this. So let's look at verse 9.
Okay.
In the 20th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Asa began to reign over Judah.
Right.
So he's reigning over Judah and reigned 41 years in Jerusalem. So he's not reigning in the northern kingdom.
Right.
So those aren't the high places that Jeroboam built.
Well, yeah. Well, what high places are those?
So if you go back to and Shechem is the other place.
Okay.
It's Bethel and Shechem. If you go back to Solomon's reign, and I'll have this here just a moment. It was pretty early on. Yeah.
When he was building the high places for his concubines.
Well,
And
so
whatnot.
that did happen, but even earlier in chapter 3. So chapter 3 begins, Solomon made a marriage alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt. He took Pharaoh's daughter and brought her into the city of David until he had finished building his own house and the house of the Lord and the wall around Jerusalem. The people were sacrificing at the high places, however, because no house had yet been built for the name of the Lord.
Okay.
So even during the time of David, people are going to the high places to sacrifice. And yeah, it's like they're going up to the top of the mountain where they built an altar to reach God.
Yeah.
And they're offering their sacrifices.
Okay. So it's just any high place that was still there from David.
Yeah. I think these high places are going to be they are going to be a nuisance for the rest of the narrative.
Okay.
So you'll see the high places, they'll say, King such and such, brought the people back to Yahweh, but he didn't take down the high places. And that's one of the ways that the kings are like graded in First and Second Kings.
Yeah.
But they didn't bring down the high places, so B- or something, right? So, but this was a part of the traditional religion of the Israelites. They built altars to God in different places.
Right.
So after Moses, you had the tabernacle, and you had the altar there, but people aren't going all the way to, they're not going all the way to the tabernacle just to offer a sacrifice.
Right.
They're offering sacrifices in other places. I mean, there were sacrifices before Moses.
Right.
Abraham offers sacrifices, right? Noah offers a sacrifice, right? So it's just, this is kind of what they did. And then as this was all happening, David decided before this, but Solomon then builds his temple to centralize it all. You want to offer sacrifice it, you're going to do it at the temple.
Okay, so that's kind of like, is that, I don't know, I guess what God wanted was for them to go to the temple instead of go to high places.
Yeah, and I mean, even like Samuel instructs Saul to offer a sacrifice.
Okay.
Like they're offering sacrifices in all these other places.
Right.
And so they go. I mean, it really is a move for centralization. Now you have to think though. God told David, "I don't need a temple built by human hands."
Okay.
So there's kind of this weird thing where God doesn't really want a temple. He gives them the tabernacle, but he doesn't want a temple. And then after the temple is built, they are supposed to, at the very least, sacrifice there.
Right.
But then God eventually tears the temple down anyway.
Right, yeah.
And then they rebuild it, and then he ends up way later tearing it down again. And then we find out, well, Jesus comes, he's the true temple.
Right.
Right? So it's kind of this weird relationship that God has with his temple.
That's like a 1,000 years long illusion.
Yeah, well, it is. It is, yeah. So and if you add the tabernacle to that, the tabernacle is built in like 1400 BC, let's say, or 1200, depending on your dating. Okay,
that's like 1500.
Yeah. So yeah, this whole thing's been in play just about this tabernacle temple thing.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I never really looked at it like that.
Yeah.